I'm based in Sweden, as you can tell from my accent. I work for one of the world's largest construction companies, and I want to quickly do three things. I want to just give you an idea of who we are, because it sets this into context and follows on very nicely from what Thomas said. I want to go through the report he mentioned, because we were one of the 4 sponsors. And then I want to show you some examples of how we're turning this into practice on a very large scale. So here we go. We're based in Sweden. We've been around for 125 years. We've been international for over 100 years. Last year we did around 15 billion euros of business, mostly in construction, but we're also a development company. So we build the sorts of things that Thomas put up there on the screen. And today, somewhere between 40 and 60% of that revenue we would class as green. And I'll show you how we class it as well. So we don't see some of the issues that our colleague from the EU mentioned. Our 5-year business plan started in January 2011. We had 49,000 employees. We've now got nearly 60,000. That number has been updated again. So we don't see a problem with this. We see a huge opportunity. We do around 10,000 contracts a year. So today we'll open or close around 40 to 50 contracts in our markets. We've 4 business streams. I'm going to concentrate on one today, which is around the commercial property down in your bottom left. But we're also into general contracting. We do a lot of residential business in Scandinavia and Central Europe and in the UK. We build half of all the passive homes in Sweden, for example. And we're into infrastructure development as well. So we do a lot of airports, highways, hospitals, big water treatment plants. We're the largest construction company in New York, mostly on infrastructure. We're rebuilding Ground Zero. We took 80 billion gallons of water when Hurricane Sandy hit New York into our excavations. So we're very big and we're focused on 4 markets. My job in Skanska is to drive our green business strategy. I've been in the company for about 8 years. And this is where we operate. So we're basically a big transatlantic business. Northern Europe and Central Europe and then the US. We have a very specialized business then in Latin America that works in oil and gas. And you can see the approximate split of business. So we're not global, but we are international. And we use the transatlantic footprint to drive good practice out of Scandinavia into the US and pull good practice from America back across. And I'll show you some examples again from the Pacific Northwest, which are at least as good as anything we can do in Scandinavia. Now, getting on to the subject for today. We can deliver just about any green building anybody wants, new or retrofit. It's not a problem for us, and we can do it profitably. We can get 40 to 60% of that 17 billion of revenue every year in these sorts of markets. We can deliver the best BREEAM buildings in the world, we can deliver the best LEED buildings in the world, or EU Green Building, or anything else you want. So it's not an issue. We've got a lot of resource. We've got 600 green designers and certified LEED APs and such like in the company. The challenge is to push the business case. And what I really want to focus on for most of this 20 minutes is the business case for green buildings. This was mentioned by Thomas. We were one of 4 sponsors because we believed that there was a huge amount of research already out there around the world. Some of it was of a very high quality, some of it was very suspect. And what we wanted to do was to commission somebody to go away and look at all this stuff and peer review it and produce a structured report that once and for all said or did not say whether there was a business case for green buildings. The main focus of this report was on commercial buildings, but it also looked at other sectors like healthcare, education and others. If you haven't seen this report, get your hands on it, because this is the definitive reference document. It was launched at EcoBuild in London on the 6th of March. One of my colleagues launched it there. And it's also been launched in other parts today. So you can take today as sort of the official launch in Ireland if you want. I'm only going to spend a few minutes on it now, but it's a very, very important report. And it debunks an awful lot of myth about green buildings. This is what's commonly seen, that the cost of building green buildings outweighs the benefits. And what I'm going to show you is that that's a load of baloney most of the time. So what this did was it looked at all the evidence that was out there, and it really started to pull it all together in a quality way for the first time. The report is targeted on the people that matter, the people that need to understand the business case. So the developers, the investors, owners and major tenants. And it looks specifically at the financials. So we've parked all the good stuff around climate change and we've parked all the good stuff about everything else. And we've just said, can you make $1 out of this? There was a series of case studies looked at which proved yet again that this isn't just a phenomenon that you find in Vancouver or Seattle or Stockholm. This works anywhere that this group of people looked. And it also looked at the whole life cycle. So it looked at the different stages and it found again that there's pretty compelling evidence that wherever you play in the value cycle, there's money to be made. And it also looked at stakeholders, because what a developer wants is not what a tenant wants. And what an owner wants is different again. And investors and such like. So different stakeholders are driven by different business case arguments. And this pulls all that together from their different perspectives. And basically what the study found was that there are 5 different distinct business cases. And I want to quickly run through these. There's the design and construction cost, asset value, operational costs, workplace productivity and health, and then the whole question of risk mitigation. So briefly on design and construction cost, building green does not necessarily need to cost more. We can build LEED Gold buildings in Scandinavia at 0 cost premium. We can build LEED Platinum at a 0.5% to 1% cost premium. In the last 7 years, from 2006 to 2012, Skanska has built 56% of all the LEED Platinum certified buildings in the markets that we play in Europe. And every one of those has been very profitable for us. We've put in the best tenants, the Microsofts, the IBMs, the Price Waterhouses of these world, and we've sold them on, when they're full of those sorts of tenants, to big pension funds in Canada and Germany. This is good business as a construction company. But there's a perception gap. If you go out and survey people, as this research did, and looked at what was going on, the perception is that it can cost up to 29% more. The reality across all the samples that this study looked at was negative by up to 0.5%, up to plus 12.5%. In our particular experience, we never get anywhere close to 12.5%. As I said, we can get platinum for a 1% premium. And there's a reason for that. We think right at the start of the project. If you get involved later on, it starts to get expensive. You've got to design it in from the start. The owner has to want it. The architects have to be competent. The consulting engineers have to be competent. The supply chain has to be competent. Everybody has to be in at the start. So it doesn't cost more. Put it on the agenda on day one and choose like-minded, skilled partners. The reason that we sponsored this work was to get the business case sorted. The reason I'm chairing the UN task force is to sort out the supply chain. The construction industry supply chain is one of the most dysfunctional supply chains in the world. We have 100,000 suppliers supplying Skanska. Just in Scandinavia, in the metro areas, and it's a small part of the world, we've got 10,000 suppliers. That's part of the problem. We need to turn it into part of the solution. And the other thing is to avoid expensive green gadgets. We don't stick wind turbines on offices. They don't work, there's no payback, but it's a great photo opportunity. You have to be intelligent about this. Thomas talked about geothermal. We do enormous, large-scale geothermal. We're just finishing a hospital in Stockholm to be the biggest hospital in Europe. We will own it. It's a PFI deal. It's $3 billion worth of construction work. We've put in 250 metre deep boreholes. It'll be heated and cooled from geothermal from the rocks under Stockholm. That's the way to go. Asset value. Again, there's a pattern starting to emerge here about the value and how easy it is to attract high-quality tenants, command higher prices when you sell on the product, and get better rent. Local market conditions do have an impact on that, so it's not consistent everywhere, but there is a pattern that is developing. And it's quite clear in certain of the more sophisticated markets that we play in that there's another side to this, that if you don't do this, there's definitely a brown discount. And it's getting to the point in London where if you've got a major office building that doesn't do this sort of stuff, you can't rent it and you can't sell it. Your asset is worth nothing. And these are some examples from the research, again, from the US from Singapore, the UK and Australia. Most of them are all above the line, which means higher performance than the benchmark, which isn't green. The same in terms of rental premiums. With the exception of one project back in 2011, they're all commanding substantially higher rental premiums. We see that all the time. Whether it's Prague, Warsaw, Bucharest, Oslo, Helsinki, Stockholm, New York, Washington, DC, Houston, Texas, Seattle, we're in all those markets. This is what we look like over there. And the occupant premium goes up as well. There's no example that's been found that shows that that's bad. Operating costs. This is the big dilemma. Energy efficiency won't work in isolation, we're seeing more and more, and particularly in the US because of fracking. Energy has never been cheaper. So we have to reframe the whole debate about energy over there and probably in Europe as well. But green buildings can save on energy and they can save on water consumption and all sorts of other operational costs. But there's a but. And I'll show you that on a later slide. The really big thing that we've started to focus on, and we're redefining our strategy at the moment in terms of communication, is productivity of humans. Now, whether it's in the workplace, or healing quicker in hospitals, or learning better in schools, or actually behaving better in prisons, because we build green prisons as well. We do PFI prisons in the UK, and they're green. We design them to be green and sustainable. We're not just trying to slam people into places like Mountjoy. So this is a big piece as well, and it's actually more important than energy efficiency. Energy efficiency is important, but this is more important from a business case point of view, and this is the reason why. Now, I don't have time to go through all this. This is all written up in the report. Basically, green buildings make people perform better, whatever circumstance those people happen to be in and whatever function that building performs. There's a general trend towards better productivity. Now, if you're the finance director, this is what you worry about. In a typical building, the biggest cost is the people. It's not the energy bill. There's a massive multiplier. A 10% improvement in human productivity knocks the socks off a 10% reduction in energy. So the focus needs to shift. Energy still needs to be done, but the human piece has got to be addressed in a much more sophisticated way than before. And then there's the risk mitigation piece. How do you protect your asset? How do you protect the capital value? How do you protect the income stream, the dividend, and everything else? It's not an issue for public buildings as such because they're not valued in that way necessarily. But if you're in the commercial world or in the private sector, you need to protect your assets, OPEX and CAPEX. So again, we're starting to see that this is a major differentiator. And our strategy, which is well communicated, it's in our annual report, we tell our shareholders all the time, what we're trying to do is build buildings that will be good for the next 20 to 50 years. And as we see it, and this report confirms us and what we do and others as well, that this cost premium that people talk about is mostly a nonsense. It's a bad attitude premium. It's starting in the wrong place premium. There's occupier benefits, there's owner benefits and costs as well. And this is how it starts to balance out. Because different players, different actors will look at this in a different way. So when we talk about the business case, we have to be much more sophisticated than that. There are business cases for different parts of the value chain. And when you do that, they far outweigh the first cost of a green building. Now, this is how we translate it in Skanska. And anybody who's been at the Saint-Gobain presentations and various other things, we put it all on a postcard, because if you can't put it on a postcard, it's too complicated. That's our business strategy for the next 5 years, and it's on our website as well. We've mapped out what's driving these changes around the world, and there's two things that are driving the built environment, not just commercial buildings, but all parts of the built environment. The first one is population growth, and the second one is rapid urbanisation. When those two things impact together, which they are more and more parts of the world, it puts an enormous pressure on energy, carbon, materials and water. And our green strategy is exactly what you see on the screen here. We've broken it up into 3 phases, what we call compliance. So we can build compliance products. We call them vanilla. Why? Because it's like vanilla ice cream. Everybody can do it. It's just delivered at a quality, at a price, on time. It's about meeting the expectations of today, codes and standards of today. But we all know that those things don't stay around for very long. They get superseded. The debate that we saw and we've moved away from is to go beyond compliance, to be green. What does it mean to be green? Does it mean 10% better than code? 20% better than code? If I told you that in Sweden we can build just about anything and beat the Swedish energy code by 60 to 90% profitably, then what the hell is the point in having a code? So we want to play, and we're starting to shape up our business, and we're exactly halfway through our business plan at the moment. We're targeting this deep green zone, what we call future-proofing. And we've got two versions of this, one for civil and one for buildings, because we also see an enormous green opportunity in civil. And I'm arguing with our executives that that's a bigger opportunity than in buildings. And we've got evidence as well, but I don't have time today to tell you about it. We're going after 7 KPIs. So, well, 6 on this, but there's a 7 one on the civil one. We're after net primary energy. Net primary energy. What does that mean? We want to take power stations out of the equation. We want to take transmission lines out of the equation. We want to go for distributed power generation. We're already doing that in Scandinavia, particularly in Sweden with district heating and district cooling. Net zero primary energy. Now, I know there's discussions today about net zero energy. We've already gone beyond that to primary. And that's a very important concept because that's the only sustainable place to be on energy. The second one is we want to get the near zero carbon construction, and EcoSem is an example of a product or a product line that can help in that direction. We want to get to zero unsustainable materials. Nobody's defined that. We've done it with the Royal Technical High School in Stockholm, and we've now built it into our procurement processes. But if you ask anybody in the supply chain of Skanska today, or most other people, what is an unsustainable material, they'll tell you, but they can't tell you what a sustainable material is. Zero hazard, the same. There's a lot of hazardous materials coming into our industry. There's about 100,000 materials used in the construction industry. Quite a few of those are hazardous, but legal. We want to phase out even the legal ones. We want to get to zero waste, particularly self-generated waste at construction, much more difficult on demolition. And we want to get the net zero on water. Now, is this a dream or is this reality? Well, we're starting to see the shift. 2 years ago, 95% of our business was vanilla. Today, somewhere between 40 and 60% is in the green zone. And this is how we define it. And all the definitions are on our website as well if you're interested. Because if you're a supplier, this is how we test you. And we're starting to see the early stages of deep green as well. Here's an example from Prague. This is a 16,000 square metre office block in the best business district in Prague. You can see how it maps on our colour palette. It's about halfway across the green zone on energy. That means it beat the Czech energy standards by 50%. There was some work done on carbon footprinting. On sustainable materials, we didn't achieve anything, and on water, we're about halfway towards the green target that we set. We sold that project recently. It's our project. It was a 67 million euro sale, highly profitable. We had some top international companies in as tenants. This is our own new head office in Finland for the national business in Finland. You can see again, very simply, what sort of green performance it's got. That's the second LEED Platinum building in Finland. We did the first one, that's the second one. The third one is being built behind it, the fourth one behind that again. This is an interesting project. This is at Velegard in the south of Sweden, at Helsingborg. This is the regional office for our Swedish business down there. This is our first deep green project. It is zero net primary energy. It is fully built from sustainable materials with zero waste, with zero hazardous materials. It's a small building, but it's the start. It proves it can be done. Thomas talked about living buildings. This is the Birchie School block in Seattle. We built this and it was commissioned in November of November of 2011. To be a living building, you have to run it for a year. The electricity meter has to be at zero on day 1, and on day 366 it still has to be on zero. the water meter the same, and there's other requirements. Last week, this was signed off as a living building. Now again, it's a small thing, it's a science block in a private school in Seattle, but it's only the 4th in the world with a certificate. It's the first on the west coast of America, and it's the start of a whole new concept of regeneration. And this is what it's led to. Our commercial development guys are in the process of building this. We've already got the tenant. It's Brooks Brothers. Now, if you know Brooks, they're one of the world's leading high-tech sports shoe manufacturers. They want a head office that makes a big statement about what they stand for, and this is it. This won't quite reach the same level as the school block, but it's going to get very, very close. And the city of Seattle is using this as a tester to see if we can build not very large, but large-scale commercial offices that are living buildings. So zero energy, zero water, zero waste, and other things as well. Brooks will be moving into that in 2014. And again, just to prove that it isn't just in the commercial world, this is the Brent Civic Centre, which we're just in the process of handing over. It's opposite Wembley Stadium. If any of you go to Wembley, it's directly opposite the football stadium. This is the largest, greenest office, public building in Europe. It's also got the highest BREEAM score ever. And again, it proves again that public sector can have this just like the private sector can have it. The leader of Brent Council has a vision of having the greenest, most sustainable premises in Europe. We've just designed it and built it for them. So, from our point of view, all of this is profitable and it's possible. I said we're 125 years old. What I didn't say at the start is we have been profitable every year for 125 years, come hell or high water, come recessions or world wars or anything else. Because we've always been ahead of the curve, just enough, we followed and tracked innovation, and then we've exploited it as quickly as we can, as successfully as we can. So, thank you.